Wet.
Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing another R.E.P.O monster drawing video, and the one I picked for today is the Reaper. This monster is somewhere between a Raggedy Ann doll and a scarecrow. She's got a sack for a head, what looks like broomsticks for arms and legs, and long blades where her hands should be, along with bits of straw hanging out all over the place. And she moves really stiffly when she walks, obviously because she doesn't have knees. And that leads into the creepiest thing about her character for me. She can't turn her head, but her eyes will move around and follow you as she walks, which gives me the impression that there's either just a head or maybe a head and torso inside the scarecrow body. And I kind of lean into that in my interpretation of her, which you'll see when I get into the final line work and color step. Unlike my last video with the clown, I actually planned out my background in the sketch phase, but I'm still going to be doing the line work and color for the main figure first, and then once I'm done, I'll go back and do the line work and color for the background. Right here you can see what I was talking about a second ago. I've added some fleshy gums inside the mouth opening of the mask instead of just having the teeth in there plain like the actual figure from the game does. I know I mentioned this in the last video, but I really appreciate the monster design for this game and how they're able to keep the designs mostly simple but still pack so many interesting details into them. And so far at least, they don't bother themselves with trying to pack in a bunch of lore around the creatures. They just make them creepy, make them kind of interesting, and throw them into a room with you. And you can kind of build your own headcanon around them as you run into them throughout the game. At this point, I'm just about done with my line work on the Reaper, so I'm going to move on to closing off all my shapes so that I can select everything and drop in that background color. And sometimes when I do this, I don't get it quite as clean as I'd like. So you can kind of see here, there's little spots where the hay color overlaps the line work. What I can do to fix that is go back to my line work layer and reselect the negative space outside the line work, but increase the selection threshold, which basically just makes it tighter when I select that negative space so that the color doesn't overlap the lines when I go in and do my color. And now that I have that fixed, I can go back in and finish my coloring on the straw. And just like with the clown drawing, I'm going to be doing the majority of my shading and texturing for each color segment. And then once I get it all done, I'll go back in and do my final shading and light work over the entire image. And sometimes you lose some of the detail that you get in this part of the color phase when you go back in at the end and add your final shading for the whole scene. But for me personally, I still find it worth it to do the details in this stage, even if they're going to be lost later. Because on one hand, I'm not sure at this part of the drawing what areas are going to end up covered up or darkened in the final shading. And on the other hand, my drawing process is kind of a meandering long process, and even doing details that won't end up in the final drawing kind of help me form a bond with or get a better feeling for where I want the drawing to go. Alright, so now that I'm done blocking the colors for the hood, I'm going to make a clipping mask over the hood color layer and use one of my texture brushes to add in a nice burlap texture over the color, and then add my shading over top of that. And I'm also using the shading to add more textures and detail into the hood, really exaggerating the wrinkles and folds and adding in more of a facial expression so it's not flat. And then I'm also adding in a second shading layer over top of that to make sure I have a lot of values and levels in the shading. And I also wanted that burlap texture to pop a little bit more, so when I finished with the shading I went through and added some highlights just to accentuate the threads in the material. And now I'm doing the red for the lips of the mask, which I can't really tell in the original figure if it's supposed to be painted on or if it's supposed to be sewn into the mask. So I just went with more of a sewn border for the mouth. And like I was saying at the beginning of the video, inside the mask I imagine there being some kind of a head or maybe head and torso. So I used a low opacity purple for the mouth inside the mask, and I made the teeth a real nasty yellow. I think one of my favorite parts of doing this drawing was just the amount of different textures between the wooden arms, the bits of straw hanging out, the rope tying everything together, the blades for the hands, the burlap hood. There's just textures all over the place on this thing. which obviously made it visually appealing, but also just made the process a lot of fun. Back to the game for a moment. I'm not sure how exactly the enemy spawns in the game work, but I'll go entire play sessions only seeing 1 or 2 types of enemies, and then in other sessions I'll have a massive spread of a bunch of different enemy types. And while I was trying to film B-roll for this video, I just could not get the Reaper to spawn. I played for probably an hour and a half, and that entire time it was just the big floating head and the little vomiting spewers. So yeah, that's why I have absolutely no B-roll of the Reaper. Alright, so now that I'm wrapping up the shading on the dress, I'm going to go in and add the flower pattern, which on the model for the video game kind of reminds me of a texture you'd see in SpongeBob, like one of those just blobby background textures. But I went with more of a stylized rose pattern for mine, which as you can see, I just drew once and then pasted copies of it where I wanted them. And then after that, I just added some dirt texture over top of the gown and moved on to the blades. And for my blades, I had them looking more curved than they are in the game. And I think the straight blades look fine, but with her name being the Reaper, I wanted to go with more of the scythe-like look, and I think it also just adds to the intimidation factor. And now adding the last touch of makeup to the Reaper's face, we are ready to move on and start doing the line work for the background. So in the game, the Reaper walks pretty slowly, so if you're able to run before she sees you, she's pretty easy to escape from. However, once she sees you, she speeds up and starts swinging her blades around, so your best bet if you don't have a clear route of escape is just to get under something. So when I was thinking about what to do for a background, that was the first thing that popped in my head. So we have a shelf with some valuables on it, and then one of the robots that you play as in the game crouched under the bottom shelf. Although you do have to be careful hiding under stuff, because if she already sees you, hiding under something isn't going to save you, because she'll lay down on her side and still swipe underneath to get at you, which can be really nerve-wracking and drive up the suspense. So when we get to the line work for the robot, you'll notice that I have him looking towards the viewer with like a, well, we're screwed kind of look on his face. I also have the Reaper looking directly at us, as if the viewer themselves is another robot hiding under something, in the moments before disaster kind of scene. And now we're doing the line work on that robot, so you can see he's all scrunched up under that shelf. If you haven't played the game, the robots aren't actually that short. They can just collapse down themselves, kind of like a telescope. Between that and the big Muppet mouth that actually moves when you talk, and the big googly eyes that actually look around at monsters and items and other players, these little guys just have a great design that makes the game so much funnier to me. I went with red for the little robot guy, because I play this game with my friend Drac all the time.
Drag her into the hole.
And he always plays red, so I thought it'd be funny to add him in there. And he actually streams on Twitch.
Look at the, it's got like a little, oh Jesus, fuck you! Oh, I killed her! You fucking killed her! He fucking killed you.
I'll have him linked below if you want to watch him. Anyways, back to the drawing. I'm just throwing the last finishing touches on the background, putting some lighting effects on that potion bottle, making the glass look transparent, and then we'll be ready to reveal the final image. And here we go, the R.E.P.O Reaper in all her scarecrow glory. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave me a like to let me know. If you'd like to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. As always, feel free to drop by the comments section if you have a suggestion for another video or even just to say hi. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Get out of here, bitch.
Jesus wept.